It was supposed to be a celebration. Two of Europe's most successful clubs, Liverpool and Juventus, meeting in the biggest football match of the year. Instead, it became one of the darkest days in sports history. On this day, in 1985, 39 people were killed, crushed, suffocated, or trampled to death in a stadium that was falling apart. It was a disaster that changed football forever. In the early 1980s, Liverpool and Juventus were at the top of their game. Liverpool had dominated English and European football. They were the reigning European champions and aiming for their 5th title. They were led by the greats, Ian Rush and Kenny Dalglish. The Italian giants, Juventus, had just won the Cup Winners' Cup and boasted a star-studded team: Michel Platini, Boniek, Sciarra, champions of Italy, champions of the world. Two of the greatest football clubs on the planet were on a collision course to meet at the European final. But by 1985, English football wasn't just known for trophies. It was known for something else: violence. Just 6 weeks before Heysel, Liverpool fans had clashed with Manchester United supporters at an FA Cup semi-final. There were stabbings, flares, fights. It was part of a pattern that had spread across English football.
Despite all the attempts to stop him, the football hooligan just refuses to give up causing trouble at matches.
Football hooliganism was on the rise. Scores of violent British football fans would clash each week in confrontations. That season, Britain's stadiums had become battlegrounds. In March, riots at Luton. In May, the Bradford fire, 56 dead. And yet, despite some protests, the final was allowed to go ahead in a crumbling Belgium stadium that hadn't passed safety checks in decades. Built in the 1920s by architect Joseph van Neck, Heysel Stadium was once the crowning jewel of Belgium's sports venues, hosting regular international football matches and the 58, 66 and 74 European finals. By the time 1985 came around though, the stadium hadn't been renovated in decades. Cracked concrete, no real crowd control, fences made of wire. It was unsafe, and everyone knew it. But despite concerns, UEFA still picked it for the final, due to its 70,000 capacity, cheaper hosting fees, and suspected hard lobbying by the Belgian FA. So, when the day finally came around, it was Liverpool and Juventus who would go head-to-head in Brussels. The travelling fans were split. Juventus fans were to be seated in zones O, N and M on the far right-hand side of the stadium. Liverpool fans were seated on the opposite end, in zones Y and X. But it was this zone, Zone Z, that would be the catalyst for what was to come. Section Z, a so-called neutral zone, was to be packed with fans from Belgium and elsewhere who did not support either team but wanted to watch a major European final anyway. In reality though, it was packed with Juventus fans, most of whom were Italians living in Belgium at the time, all coming to support their team and who found themselves just a few feet away from the Liverpool section, separated by a single flimsy fence. As kickoff approached, the atmosphere turned hostile. Taunts from the Liverpool fans towards the fans in Zone Z soon turned to chants. Chants then turned to bottles being thrown, and bottles quickly turned into bricks. The tension between the two sets of fans was at boiling point. At 7 p.m, just 1 hour before the scheduled kickoff time, it happened. A group of Liverpool fans broke through the flimsy fence into Section Z and began clashing with the Juventus fans. a surge of panic swept through the Italian and Belgian supporters trapped on the wrong side of the terrace. They fled, backwards, sideways, forwards, over one another, toward a low retaining wall at the edge of the pitch. This wall, unmaintained and unprepared, crumbled under the weight of hundreds of fans trying to escape the violence that had erupted further up the terraces. Bodies began to pile up, and soon dozens were crushed, trampled and suffocated. It was carnage. By the time the dust settled, 39 fans were dead. Mostly Italians, some Belgians, one teenager, one grandfather. Bodies lay on the edge of the pitch in plain sight of the players, and over 600 people were injured. To this day, it stands as one of the most fatal disasters in sporting events history. But then, something rather unthinkable happened. The match actually began. UEFA officials, fearing more riots and not being able to control the crowd, decided to play the final anyway, just 1 hour after its scheduled kickoff time of 8 p.m. The match itself was a tight affair, the atmosphere in the stadium eerie. Juventus eventually won 1-0, a Michel Platini penalty. He sprinted away in celebration as he scored, unaware, he later claimed, of the dead piled behind the advertising boards. The final whistle blew. There was no trophy lift, and muted celebrations. The fallout was seismic. UEFA banned all English clubs from European competition for 5 years. For Liverpool, it was 6. Margaret Thatcher, the UK PM, backed the ban, calling for football to clean itself up. The British press turned on itself. Fans were blamed, the Brussels police were blamed, UEFA was blamed. Nobody came out of the Heysel disaster clean. In Italy, the pain ran deeper. To this day, Juventus fans still feel the emotion of 1985. When the clubs met again 20 years later, many turned their backs during the minute's silence, unable to forgive, unable to forget. Heysel wasn't just a football disaster. It was a moral collapse, of safety, of accountability, of empathy. It marked the end of an era and the beginning of a long reckoning. English football would never be the same again.